Hi, my name is Alessandro Angelosi and that's a video tutorial coming from cgcookie.com for Max Cookie. In this tutorial we'll see some principles about lighting with VRay in 3ds Max. So we'll see how to use some light sources and how to manage the lighting for the basic information about how to light a 3D character or a 3D scene with VRay. So we have just VRay set as a rendering engine. You see that this one is the typical scene we are using for some tests. It's the pipeline animation coming with 3ds Max installation. And we have the light in 3ds Max. We can use with VRay all the basic lighting from 3ds Max, but we have also the category of lighting coming with the Chaos Group rendering engine. We have the IES lighting, we have the ambient light, and we have the sun, and we have the general VRay light. We can start to light the scene. So the first light we need inside the scene is the key light. The key light is the main light giving us the general lighting and shadows inside our scene. So for example, to have something simple, we are going to create the lighting. You see that the light in VRay has a shape, and actually the default is a plane. So we'll obtain area light and area shadows directly using the VRay Light because we have the shape that is emitting the light energy. So you see that we have two possibilities. We can have this free light, or we can decide to have a targeted light. So we can then move a target, but I prefer to manage the normal one, but you see that the target is there. So to manipulate the light, you can use directly the target as the other targeted light sources in 3ds Max. So let's use with no target, and you see that we can have the plane, the dome, the sphere, and the mesh. For the moment, I like to focus on the plane, dome, and sphere. So the plane is the one you are using now. You see that we have a plane emitting the light. It can be square or it can be a rectangle. We have the dome. The dome is similar to the skylight. It can be a dome, half dome, or a full 360 degree dome. It can use a map or an HDR map to use the image-based lighting. And the sphere is obviously a spherical light. So obviously the shadows and the illumination inside the scene will change using a different shape. So let's start, for example, with the sphere. The sphere is similar to an omni light in 3ds Max. You see that this is the light and that's the lighting. And if we go to render this one, let's do really little rendering. We have no GI, so we are using a really simple setup. If we go to render, you see that we have this kind of lighting. So we have the light coming from this point, we have the area light there with the other shadows, and we have a nice illumination. Let's try to give a more simple shader to the creator. So let's go there, and inside the VRay material we'll use a VRay material, and we go to have a blue. So we have again the color we were using before, and we have a freshen reflection, just a little bit maybe. And let's say that we have some specular glossiness, and we have a little bit of anisotropy, and that's all. So a really simple stuff. So if we change the scale, let's go there. We can change the scale of this light to have a different result about lighting. So if the light is more little, we'll have less lighting inside the scene, and we'll need more power to the light. So you see it is more little, so we have less lighting. If we have a bigger light, we'll have more lighting. That's normal. And also the shadows will be more or less smoothed. So let's go to have a little light, something like that, but we'll have more power. So let's try with 300 for the multiplier. It is still too low, but I like to manage also the color mapping, so we'll use with the gamma. Okay, it's all planet, so it is right. We go for something more higher, really high, and let's see. You see now it is really high. Let's go maybe to half, so 1500. We go to illuminate. We have the not so much illumination, but you see that the shadows is less smooth, less blurred. So depending on the scale of the light, we are obtaining a different lighting there. So you know that you can also manage the multiplier. You have different value to control the multiplier, and you can control also the color or the temperature of the light. So you can decide to use the temperature to have a warm or a cold light, and you see that the color is changing accordingly with the temperature you are using. So now I'm using a warmer light. If I go with a higher temperature, we go for a cold lighting, and you see that the color is changing accordingly. But if you want, you can use just the color. So in this case, you can decide to have which color of lighting you like to have. So in this case, you see I can light with a red light. Nice. Let's go for back again to a neutral lighting. We have some options that are really similar to the other option we have for the normal light in 3ds Max, and we're talking about the cast shadows. So in this way, we decide to have the shadows or to have no shadows casted by the light. Other stuff interesting for the moment, we are not talking about the double-sided because it's useful just for the planar light. Let's move this slide inside the scene so it will be visible. So if we go to render something like that, you see that we have this kind of illumination, but we see the light inside the scene. It can be useful if you like to see the light bulb, but if you don't like to have this one visible inside the rendering, but you like to have the lighting, you have to set the invisible. So if we go to render again, you see that we have the same lighting, same shadows, but we have no more visibility for the light inside the scene. Other interesting stuff is that the light inside VRay has the normal decay for a realistic lighting. If you don't like to have decay, and I mean, you see there we have a huge lighting due to the intensity of the light. But there, for example, we have less lighting. In this case, we have to set the no decay. And if you go to illuminate, you see that the light is huge. The light is huge because we are using a really high multiplier. So in this case, if we go back to a really low lighting, you see that it's starting to become normal, but this is still high. And it means that if we go to some parameters similar to the basic parameter in 3ds Max, like for example 1, we have a normal lighting, but obviously it is less interesting because it is less realistic, because the decay is not the real one as the real world lighting. So let's go back to the no decay, and let's go back to our illumination. Nice. Some other stuff interesting is that we can manipulate, you see, the affect diffuse, affect specular, and affect reflection. That's nice because we can decide if a light is visible inside the diffuse, the specularity, or the reflection. We can, for example, go inside there, the material. We have a little bit of reflectivity. So we can decide, for example, that this light is just illuminating. So this means that we are just illuminating the scene, but we are not creating reflection, for example. And I mean, if we have, let's create a simple spherical mesh. There we can go to the shaded view, so we have a standard lighting. Let's pick this one. We have this object there. And we can use a chrome material so we can manage the reflection. Let's call it chrome. And we go to a VRay material, black color, freshen reflection, white for the reflectivity. Let's go maybe to 0.95 for the reflection glossiness. And we have obviously no reflection. Let's go for 12 for the higher error. You see that it is a reflective material. And if we like, we can go for word. It is better for the metals. And just a little bit of anisotropy. Okay. We can go to render. And you see that actually we have this sphere, the chromic sphere, is reflecting everything, but it's not reflecting the light and it's not working on the specularity. If we pick the light source and we go there and we say, please affect the specularity, in this case the light will be not reflected, but it is starting to work on the specularity. And you see a little bit of specularity over the character 2. If we say to use the affect reflection, in this case it is also reflected. Obviously it's not so simple to see because the specularity is obviously circular there and the light is obviously a sphere. So if we go to remove the specularity, you will see that we are still seeing the sphere. This time it's not stretched over this axis because we are just generating the reflection, and you see that we have the reflection here too. So we can decide, for example, to have just the reflection and to have no diffusion. So you see that we have the reflection there, but we have no diffusion, so no illumination and no specularity. So this kind of stuff work generally with all the light in VRay. So you can do the same thing for the sphere, the same thing for the other plane, dome, and mesh. So we have other parameters there, and one of the most important is the subdivision. The subdivision is useful to have, let's see, the shadows. If we go to render, you see that there we have a huge, let's say, dithering due to the illumination we are using. If we like to have more precise shadows, we have to go higher. Let's see, for example, what happened. Let's zoom. Let's see what happened if we have 32 about the sampling. We go to render, and you see that the dithering is going out, and it seems everything perfect. This parameter obviously will slow down the rendering, so you have to find the best compromise. So maybe we can try to lower it using 16. At 16 we have just a little bit of dithering, and this dithering maybe can be removed just using the anti-alias and the DMC sampling parameters. So let's say, for example, 24 to have a nice compromise between the quality and the rendering time. So you see actually it seems not visible, the dithering, and we have a nice illumination. So if we work with the planar light, we have the same thing. We have, as we saw before, we have also the dome, and that means that we can go there and set to dome, and you see that it seems to have the skylight. If we go to light, but we have to have a lower value because obviously we have no not the same decay. So let's say, for example, at 1, that's the default value for let's say a skylight. So you see we have a basic lighting really similar to a skylight. There we have the reflection of the dome, so the dome is all around this, the scene. We can have a higher value there, and we have the same parameters, but another interesting thing is that we can use a texture, and that means that we can use the texture we like to have. So for example, you can use an HDR map, and with the HDR map you are obtaining a let's say for example a VRay HDR, and we go to browse, and maybe we can use a map. We use it for some old tutorial, so let's go to see there, and for example let's go inside October, and we have human skin texture. Let's see for an interior map, so loft lights. This maps come with 3ds Max. It is a spherical map, and then we can use this one as texture. Let's say that the resolution is 2K, and it is a spherical full dome, because you see we have the upper area and the lower area. Let's go to render. Obviously the lighting will change depending on the map, and you see we have less lighting, but now we have the right shadows coming from this point inside the room. And this means that if we go there and we say to have more lighting, for example 4, and we go to light, we'll have a nicer lighting with more power. You see everything is more light, and obviously it needs a little bit of tweak, because you see there now we have too much lighting, but it depends also on the material. So it is better to go there, and I think we are talking about this material, so let's see to pick it. Okay, so let's pick this one, and let's create VRay material, and we can paste there. We say that we have a little bit of reflectivity, but we have a huge value there for this parameter for the glossiness, and the map is a little bit darker. Okay, close and save. Let's go to see. It is rendering. Obviously now it is taking a little bit more, because we have also the reflectivity and over the ground, but the rendering is better than before. So you see, in this way we are using the map to manage an IBL lighting, so it is based on the map we are using, and that's a way to use the VRay Light. But you know, you can for example also decide to use this light just to generate the reflection, and in this case for example we can decide to have another light, and this light will be let's start to use a plane, and we can rotate it and move it a little bit distant. Let's see what happened. So we have a main light, but we have just reflection. This main light needs more power. Let's go for 400. We start to have a little bit of lighting. Let's go to 5000. Okay, sorry, I have to activate the diffuse and specularity, and let's say maybe that we have just a diffusion, so we have just the lighting generated by this one, but let's go lower again because maybe it is too much. Let's see what happened. Okay, it is too much, but it is nice as amount of lighting. So you see we have this light that is illuminating the scene, and the skylight, let's talk about dome light, is generating just the reflectivity. We can go lower with this light too, so in this case we'll have less lighting and the reflection generated by this one. We are actually working with no global illumination. Obviously we can set to on the global illumination. We can use the light cache. I will use all the trees I have. Let's go fast, so just 800 subdivision show calculation so we can see it. And then we have the radiance. Let's go to set to really low the radiance, so we are not taking care about the quality actually. But you see, in this way, we are using also the global illumination to have a better lighting for this character. We have just a key light and we have a reflection light, and that's all. Let's go back and let's set the dome light to off actually, because I don't like, that's not a problem. We can use it because we are just generating the basic lighting. So let's pick there. You see that this one is really big, and using a big light in this case, it is giving us really smooth shadows about the character. Let's see if we obviously we change this one. We'll have a different lighting inside the scene. You see that everything is dark because now the light is really little, and you know, we need a more power to generate the illumination, and now the shadows are more crisp and more precise. So in this way you can control the lighting setup and how you like to light the scene. So let's go to generate, let's say that this one, for example, has no parameters there, so edit poly, and I like to remove this polygon so we have just the dark on the back. So that's our light, and let's start to play with the lighting. So we have this light coming from this point because you see that's the camera. And it is interesting to have the light coming from a angled position with the camera. So I like to manage a little bit the lighting coming from this point. If we go to render, you see that now we have this lighting coming just from this part of the scene, and that's interesting. We can see when the characters move and stands in this position. If we go to render, you see that we have this warm lighting coming from this point that is creating the character silhouette. But we can decide, for example, that this one is a warm light, yes, and we can go for a color like this one. If we go to render, you see that's the color it is giving to our scene. And we can, for example, decide to have another light. This light comes from the back, and this light is maybe will become the main lighting. This one is blue, so it is a cold lighting, and a little bit more clear, something like that. And let's start to set to off this one so we can start to manage a different lighting. So you see we have a lighting coming from the back top with this kind of illumination, so it is more similar to a night illumination. Back there, let's say that it has a little bit more power, so 250. And it has more diffusion, so to have more diffusion about the shadows we can have a bigger light sources. Okay, you see that that's more power. And then we can decide to have the other light from the opposite area, this one, but I like to change a little bit the material for the character too, to have something more clear. Okay, and this one now is set to on. A trick to use the light there is to use the tools VRay Light lister. So you see it is like the light lister, but you can move between the lights, selecting the light in this way, and you see it is selecting a different light, and you have some parameters directly visible there. So we can manage some stuff like set to off, for example, the reflection. Move to this one and say, okay, let's set to off the key light, and let's change the color for this lighting there, and try to render. So then we can render the image, and we see that this one is the lighting we are giving to the character, and then we can decide, okay, let's set to on this one and let's use 150, so let's power to the second one. Then we go to render, and you see that we have the main key light coming from there, and we have the secondary lighting coming from this point. But in this case we can also decide to have this one a little bit more back the character, and we can, let's rotate. Okay, and you know, again inside the VRay Light lister we can set to off this one to manage just the lighting coming from the back. So you see that's the lighting actually, so we have the light that is projecting the illumination there, and then we can decide to set to on again the warm light. So you see that now we have this warm light from there. In this case, something that is happening is that we have no rim light, or it seems that the rim light are not so much power. So to manage this situation, you can do some stuff. You can, for example, add a rim light, and I mean to add the rim light we have just to go there, rotate this one, and then we have to move it, and this one again can be like this one, and we say that it has no shadows and it is affecting just the diffuse, and maybe we have to add to the main light the specularity and the reflection, and this one will set to the reflection and the specularity too. So back in the VRay Light, refresh, so it will be added also the new light, this one, and this one is the fill light. Let's say that this one is 100, so let's set to off the secondary light and the key light, and let's see what we have when we are lighting in this way. You see, it is really power light because it is big, so we can decide to go there, let's say to use a lower value. We go to render, you see that now it is nicer. We have to rotate a little bit this one because I like to have more something like a rim effect. So you see it is more over the border of the character. Now it can need a little bit more energy, so let's say maybe 35 and render. Okay, we can, for example, add the secondary lighting coming from there, and you see now we are having the fill light too. The fill light can be more coming from the front, so we can pick this one, rotate a little bit and move it to stay more like to the front of the character. Then we can go to render. You see that now it has more power than before, but it is not a problem. We can go back there, and let's say that this one has, for example, 95 and render. You see it's less power than before. And then we can have back our main light. We can have a brighter look and render. It needs a little bit of tweaks because you see it is creating a really huge lighting. So we can go lower, and let's see what happens if we try to have a really lower value for this lighting. You see that everything is coming more interesting, and we have nice looking there lighting. Maybe just a little bit more, so let's go for 75. Okay, and the lighting is coming more interesting than before. In this case, then we can go back to the VRay Light, the dome light, and it will be used, as you see, just as the reflection to have richer reflection inside our scene. And the other interesting thing is that if we like to have some brighter and better control over the character, let's save. Let's go in the material, but before I like to render this one with a mixture neutrality. Let's go for 6, and there it is a little bit more precise. And let's go to F16 and 2. We don't manage for the moment the noise. I will use more memory and low priority for the rendering. And let's do a bigger render, so 900. Okay, it is really fast, as you see, and it's preparing our render and really no time. So we have nice lighting over the character because we have the fill light with a cold value, we have a warm secondary light from there, and we have an higher key light there illuminating the character. And if we like to have, for example, we can decide that this one is not visible on the reflection, and this means that we have to go inside the VRay Light lister, select this one, and you see that it is affecting the reflection. We can remove it, and if we go to render, let's say this part, we can see if it is going better. In this case, we are just working on the specularity and the diffusion. So you see we have less burning over the character and over the sphere too. Okay, let's pick both. And let's imagine that we like to have a little bit more control over the lighting. We can do something really simple. And I mean, we can pick the material of the character, and it can be an object, a character, a metal, whatever you like to have. And we can decide, for example, to use this color as basic color. So we can go inside the diffuse channel, and there we can use a composite, so we can stratify some different level. We go to have an RGB tint to have the same color we had before, so RGB tint, and then with the right mouse button we can paste there, and there we have the black, and black also for the other channel. So we have again the same color we had before. Then we can add a new layer, and there we can do something like that. We can go to have a gradient ramp, directly a fall-off. You see that the fall-off is giving the color controlling the fall-off type. We go for a Fresnel, so it is going to have a white color over the Fresnel. And if we go to render something like that, let's go in the rendering view. For example, for this part, we'll have, you see the black over the suite and the white over the border, the edges. So we are having more light over the edges, and in the case we are using the other color, that means that, for example, we can use this one as an addition, so we have more coloring over the edges of the character. In this case we are obtaining a little bit more power energy over the lighting over the border. So the interesting thing is that you can decide how much just working over the fall-off. So you can decide, for example, that you like to have light covering more the treasure. So that means that you see we have more lighting there, and we can decide to have, for example, 75 about the energy, because we are using less power to mix the texture. And in this case, you see that we are having a different lighting because there we have less lighting and there we have more lighting than before. Or you can decide to have, for example, less coloring, and we can go for something really low, something like the index of refraction 1.15, so we have just a little bit over the edges. And in this case, if we go to render, we'll have less light over the body and more light just over the character edges. You will notice there that we have a little bit more lighting, and the lighting is going to be more interesting, and we are doing nothing. We are just controlling this effect just with the fall off over the creator. So that's really nice. Let's go to save, and let's see for a different situation what we are obtaining. For example, at this frame, to understand if the lighting is going to be nice for the entire illumination. You see that we have the cold lighting from there, and we have the other lights coming from the other point, and it seems not bad. Maybe we can have something different, and we can add one more light. And I mean, let's save to be sure, but we can, for example, go in there and move this one to have it more on the front. And in this case, we are trying just to colorize a little bit. So if we go to render, we'll have, obviously, you see mainly the cold light and just a little bit of light coming from the light we just had there. And then in this case, we can add another light trying to simulate this kind of coloring come from the other point. So we can just mainly copy this one and put it there and rotate, but this time will be more powerful. And let's say that this one has just the diffusion. If we go to render, you'll see that we are maybe let's render just this part to speed up the process. And if we go to render, you see that we have actually more light coming from this part, just a little bit of filling there, and then the cold light coming from the other area. Okay, we can see what happened when we have the character standing. We can go there and say to render this part. And you see that in this case I prefer this way because we have a little bit of filling of orange color. Then we have the cold lighting from the left and the warm light coming from the right. Let's see when the character is in the front. We should go there, select this area, and let's see. And you see that the illumination is more interesting than before. If you like, you can manage a little bit this one. We can go for a warmer color with a little bit more energy, and we can see if it is going better or it is better to go back to the previous test. You see that we are generating more contrast because we have more lighting coming from this part. And if we like, we can just rotate just a little bit more. And let's see what happened. We can have a little bit more contrast between the light areas. So we have the cold, the filling, and the warm light there. Let's see also the other part of the character. Okay, and you see that obviously it's not bad how it is looking. We can maybe manage just a little bit the reflectivity over the character, and I mean we can go for 0.6 to have a more smoothed reflection, but it's just to have a nice little final look. And we'll see there in a deeper way. You see that it's better than before. If you like to do this render, you can add the ambient occlusion, and to decide how to work with the ambient occlusion, you have two ways. You can directly add it there, so you can decide to add to the rendering, and we can go to see the differences with the ambient occlusion. Actually it is not so high because I'm using 0.8, but it can give a little bit more detail to the rendering in some area, as the area where we have the contact shadows or something like that. So that's basically all the things I like to see with you. Maybe I can still decide to have a little bit more contrast with the slide, and something like that can be achieved just using higher light. And go back to, and you see that we are achieving a higher detail result there because we have more light. To have a more interesting look, we can make a little bit of bumping over the character, and let's go for maybe the cellular, and we have to see the scaling if it is too much. It is obviously really high. We can go 10 times more little, or maybe also more, and render, just to have a not so clear surface. Now we need maybe just a little bit more bigger, and we should have a good scaling. And we can make a test also there on the foot to see if it is nice. Okay, you see that it's nicer than before. Obviously it is slower, but the quality is going up. So if we go to render the image with a final quality, we can try to have, for example, maybe a little bit lower. Let's go with a higher value for the DMC sample, and we can see the final result. And that's the final result. So we talked about the basic principles of lighting in VRay. Obviously, this kind of principle can be used for other rendering engine too. Obviously, we have just parameters, different parameters, or maybe some more feature or less feature. It was just an introduction to start understanding the lighting of a scene, and we'll continue to prepare some more tutorials to understand better how to catch more detail and how to obtain a more interesting look just working with the light inside the scene. So for the moment that's all, and I hope to see you back on Max Cookie to check for new tutorial coming from cgcookie.com. Bye.